Comic book events are always a mixed bag. These days, there is always some sort of publisher-wide initiative that is designed to see characters come together and fight some larger-than-life threat with worlds shattering stakes. These are often books that are written by an all-star writer with an all-star artist doing the pencils on the book. This trend was really started with Marvel's Secret Wars event, with DC doing their response and first major telegraphed reboot of their line, Crisis on Infinite Earths. These events often tie up the whole comic publisher's library and would annoy the shit out of me, as I would be reading Amazing Spider-Man or something month by month. Then the standard title would be cut off for an Avengers vs. X-Men tie-in or something weird like that. The idea, though, was to make something big and special. Films kind of tried to emulate this too eventually, with the likes of Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. These events range from cool to annoying, but usually come with a suite of retcons, contrivances, and changes that sometimes lead to further reboots. I fucking hated when companies would re-establish their line, which sort of became overly common following DC's New 52. Regardless, though, in 2006, Mark Millar, a superstar comic writer behind stories like Kick-Ass, Wanted, Kingsman, Old Man Logan, Superman Red Son, and more, will be set to write a crossover in the main universe of Marvel. Previously being primarily known at Marvel for working on their original Ultimate Comics line, he would be joined by Steve McNiven, who worked with him on Old Man Logan, with the concept of the book being that the Marvel Universe gets in a civil war that would shake up the status quo of the Marvel Universe as a whole. This story follows the fallout of the New Warriors, a group of heroes who were filming a reality show about their lives as superheroes, when they find a group of villains that they fight on camera for the show. These villains are considered B-listers, but in part due to the New Warriors' lack of due diligence, Nitro, one of the villains, causes an explosion, wiping out a school and 600 people in the blast radius, also killing all of the New Warriors and the other villains. This leads to a large public outcry against the heroes of the Marvel Universe. After some debate by commentators and heroes across the universe, war lines are drawn with an army that includes Luke Cage, Cyclops, Black Panther, Daredevil, Wolverine, Goliath, Nick Fury, and the Young Avengers joining Captain America in opposing a newly proposed required registration of all superheroes, and Black Widow, Mr. Fantastic, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, Wasp, Wonder Man, Sentry, Blade, and Deadpool joining Iron Man in the pro-registration side of the war. The government-backed heroes start a campaign of detaining or recruiting new heroes as they encounter them. This is when the war's first great battle happens on Yancey Street, leading to widespread collateral damage. The teams escape, but the pro-registration Avengers again lure the secret anti-registration Avengers into a trap. The secret Avengers start to gain the advantage, but Tony brings out Thor, who actually isn't Thor. Around this time in the comics, Thor was dead, so this was kind of a surprise. Basically, Tony cloned Thor and made him half Thor clone, half cyborg version of Thor, kind of sort of like cyborg Superman in a way, I guess. However, this fake Thor starts shooting lightning, which kills Goliath instantly. The Secret Avengers flee, with the Secret Avengers furious at what happened to their ally at the hands of their former friends. Spider-Man, who started on Tony's side and revealed his secret identity as a show of goodwill to the other pro-registration heroes, starts thinking Tony is going way too far following Goliath's death, on top of the terrible conditions of Tony's hero-containing prison within the negative zone. Tony confronts Peter as Peter tries to defect and the two battle, but this almost leads to Spider-Man's death, as during his escape, Jack-o'-lantern and Jester confront a weakened Spider-Man in the sewers of New York, only for him to be saved by the Punisher, who brutally kills the two villains. Spider-Man at this point realizes, for lack of a better word, this whole thing is getting pretty fucked up. Spider-Man and the Punisher join Cap, and all is good at first. Punisher heads off to find the negative zone plans, planning an escape for all the heroes that were captured, as Sue Storm tries recruiting Namor, who she kinda had a thing with, and with Reed on the other side, their marriage is sort of on the rocks, and the Invisible Woman wants to get some Aqua Schlong. Upon returning to the group, Goldbug and the Plunderer show up to join Captain America's cause, something the Punisher doesn't want, so he shoots them both dead. Captain America realizes that he brought a psychopath into the group, so the pair start fighting. Captain America kicks the Punisher out of the group, and then the Secret Avengers show up to the final fight. Turns out Atlantis had a change of heart, and Namor shows up to help the anti-registration cause, though Iron Man gets the Thor clone in on the action. The whole battle causes widespread damage, with Hercules killing the blasphemous Thor clone in battle. Captain America and Iron Man fight, but the police and firemen come to Captain America and try to keep him from killing Iron Man. Captain America surrenders, realizing the Secret Avengers went too far, and he convinces the group to stand down. Following the miniseries, Captain America is assassinated in custody and dies for a number of years, with Bucky Barnes taking over as Captain America for a while. Spider-Man is outed as Peter Parker, and people start trying to kill him, with Wilson Fisk accidentally almost killing Aunt May, which leads Spider-Man to make a deal with Mephisto to have the world forget he is Spider-Man and saving Aunt May, though costing him his marriage to Mary Jane. Tony takes on Nick Fury's role as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. The 50-state superhero initiative starts, stationing heroes across the whole country for a broader reach than the heroes previously had, with like 90% of them being in New York originally. Several heroes leave the United States to avoid joining Iron Man's regime. Speedball loses it, having caused the disaster, becoming penance and joining the Thunderbolts. Black Panther and Storm step in for Reed and Sue in the Fantastic Four, while the two repair their marriage and fractured family, and Thor comes back pretty pissed that Iron Man made an evil clone and killed a fellow superhero with it. Basically, the series sets up a new widespread status quo for the Marvel Universe. The series premieres a handful of characters, most notably Ragnarok, or Thor's clone, an evil version of Thor that kills Bill Foster, or the Goliath, and while he seemingly dies here, he doesn't, and appears sporadically ever since. Hercules, though confusingly not the Hercules that killed fake Thor, first appeared in Civil War number 6 and never appeared again. It was a weird hero to introduce, given the fact that there was already a Hercules in the Marvel Universe who appeared in this very event to destroy the Thor clone. He never appeared again. Calamity first appeared, and he had a tiny bit of use beyond the event, but was not used a ton, appearing around 18 times in the last 18 years since this event happened. And Bannerman Brown and Green first appeared in issue 6 as part of the Order, but also died shortly after the event. I bring this up to mostly say that a lot of characters were in this series, literally dozens on each side of the battle, but Mark Millar and Stephen McNiven didn't really have time to create new characters to pad the roster. Thor's clone probably being the most notable, but still minor addition to the cast of this comic. Look, talking about every character's motivation would be very hard. There's tons of things that happen and lots of moving parts. But the long and short of it is Captain America and Iron Man's clashing ideologies. Miller wanted to make allusions to early 21st century America, which had at this point already seen 9/11 and the first few years of the War on Terror. Media became more cynical around this time. A few examples include Casino Royale, a tonal 180 for the James Bond franchise. Following the campy and fun Pierce Brosnan films, Batman went through a similar metamorphosis, with Nolan's darker Batman trilogy taking over for Joel Schumacher's campy entries of the Batman franchise. This is something Mark shows clearly. You have the New Warriors, who are filming a reality TV show about superheroes totally unsafely with little care and running around without considering collateral damage, something that was kind of meant to show the self-serving nature of the rising genre of reality TV. Then after they kill hundreds of people, they evoke a lot of imagery from 9/11. Tony takes the hard stance on surveillance and giving away liberties in the name of safety, which was a huge talking point around this time. Captain America at the end of the book is told by the regular people to stand down, with the Secret Avengers surrendering their rights to end the bloodshed. The book ending with Captain America in handcuffs is basically a walking American flag in chains. It all spells out the new cynical 21st century. This book is incredibly metaphorical and cynical, and it all takes place in the main Marvel universe. hoping to kick these colorful 20th century icons into the new millennium, following the over-the-top storytelling of the 90s and 80s main Marvel Universe books. The art in this book is pretty solid and lots of stuff goes on. This did lead to some production delays since it took tons of coordination, tons of characters in each packed panel, not to mention Marvel spared no expense to make this an evergreen book that they knew would likely be a scale almost unseen in comics to that point. I think the cover design being a half solid color is nice since it helps to tell what ties in or not, but on the other hand, I love comic art and cover art, so I kind of prefer the covers without the stuff. I think they could have maybe done something a little more subtle. I suppose at stores back in 2006 or 2007 though, it made it less overwhelming to find the books you wanted in theory. I started reading off the comic rack in 2008, being more of a trade guy at this point, but to this day, with the massive amount of comics, it can be a bit overwhelming to find what you want unless you set up a pull list with your local store or online. So I kind of understand why they were trying to clearly mark what was and what wasn't part of the event with these banners, though I can't help but look at some of these covers and think, damn, I wonder what the other half would have had. The book is somewhat dark, as I talked about, but Civil War as a title is more or less just a guide to the story of Civil War, and this can lead to it being a bit mechanical at times and exposition heavy, which I think is sort of the Achilles heel of this book, as it makes it pretty hard to get the full satisfaction of what Marvel was trying to do in these books. These days, it's really easy to find the trade of this book, but damn, unless you're chasing around the series with a checklist, you're probably going to miss some of the stuff, sadly, as this book has around 100 tie-in issues beyond the 7 main series issues, which also led naturally to some tonal issues, and the story kind of keeps moving even beyond what was happening in front of us in the main book. At times the book just feels sort of incomplete since you don't have all the tie-ins, which, if I'm being frank, ranged from small vignettes to more or less required reading to fully grasp what's going on in the main narrative of the book. I think you can read the 7-issue miniseries, but you'll either leave a bit unsatisfied or with the daunting task of trying to follow this massive narrative spanning dozens of creators, titles, and issues on a book that, mind you, is almost 2 decades old now. The book, however, has a prose novel, was adapted into the Marvel Cinematic Universe as the 3rd Captain America film, and was adapted into a video game, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, which I just reviewed, so check that out. This review was supposed to coincide with that video, but I got sidetracked a bit, so sorry about that. Finally, Civil War would have a sequel event through Civil War 2 in 2016, which was made to hype up Captain America Civil War in the MCU more than anything else, as the comic line has notably done fairly often. That was another pretty large event, this time written by Brian Michael Bendis, creator of characters like Miles Morales and Ironheart, but we'll hold off on that for now. That story sees Iron Man facing off against Captain Marvel instead of Captain America. Would I call Civil War as an isolated comic good? No, probably not. It's pretty okay. It has some really solid art and solid moments that I think comment on society much more than the often escapist medium of mainstream comics typically does. That said, it's just really weird from a pacing perspective, unless you're down to chase down dozens of comic issues, which I don't think should feel as necessary from a financial and time perspective as it truly is to read this book. But that is largely the problem with event comics. It's a gimmick, and like everything else in comics, the ramifications were short-lived and largely wiped out by like 2010. I think if anything, this book is most worthwhile as a historical document and blueprint for the more concise stories that were birthed out of the concept, though I think deep down I only get so much mileage out of the concept of heroes punching each other over some flimsy ideals and convolutions.